What if your suffering isn't pointless? What if the very thing breaking you apart is actually assembling something greater within you? We fight against pain as if it were our enemy, thrashing in the dark waters of our misery, exhausting ourselves, in resistance. But what if resistance itself is the true poison? Have you ever noticed how the most beautiful spirits often emerge from the most damaged places? The most profound insights from the darkest valleys? There's a hidden pattern here that few discover. A secret that transforms victims into victors. A perspective that turns prisons into classrooms. This isn't blind optimism. This is the raw truth about human resilience that modern comfort has made us forget. When you stop fighting against life, when you finally surrender to its natural flow, something extraordinary happens. Freedom, not from pain but within it. What if I told you that your greatest liberation isn't found in escaping suffering, but in transcending it, in finding purpose within it? A Holocaust survivor discovered this truth in the most unimaginable circumstances. His name, Viktor Frankl, and his insight might just save your life. The human mind makes a fundamental error when facing suffering. It assumes that pain without relief is pain without purpose. We frantically search for exits when sometimes what we really need is entrance, a deeper way in. Viktor Frankl wasn't just another academic or philosopher. He was a psychiatrist who endured the unendurable, surviving 4 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. He watched as everything was stripped from him, his manuscript representing years of research, his family, his dignity, his identity. Everything except one thing they could never take: the freedom to choose his response to suffering. In the most extreme laboratory of human suffering imaginable, Frankl made a revolutionary discovery. Those who survived the camps weren't necessarily the physically strongest. They were those who found meaning in their suffering, those who even in hell could find purpose in pain. Frankl emerged from this crucible to develop logotherapy, from logos, meaning meaning, a therapeutic approach centered on finding purpose even in life's darkest moments. His seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, has sold over 16 million copies and transformed countless lives. Why? Because it speaks to the deepest human hunger, not happiness, but meaning. What makes Frankl's approach so powerful is that it doesn't deny suffering or offer empty platitudes. It doesn't tell you to just be positive when your world is collapsing. Instead, it asks, what if your suffering itself holds meaning? What if, paradoxically, by stopping your resistance to pain, you discover its purpose? Frankl wrote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. This isn't resignation, it's transformation. It's understanding that sometimes the flow of life carries us through territories we would never choose to visit, but which contain lessons we desperately need to learn. Think about water for a moment. When it meets an obstacle, it doesn't fight. It flows around. It doesn't resist, it adapts. Water doesn't deny the existence of the rock. It acknowledges it and finds a new path. In doing so, water shapes even the hardest stone over time. This is the essence of Frankl's wisdom. Not to break ourselves against immovable realities, but to flow with them, transform with them, and ultimately transform them. The modern world tells us to fight, resist, overcome, push through, don't accept limitations. While admirable in some contexts, this mindset becomes poison when facing inevitable suffering. Cancer, loss, betrayal, failure. Some stones cannot be moved immediately, and trying to do so only exhausts us. Frankl shows us another way, a path of acceptance that isn't weakness but profound strength. A surrender that isn't defeat, but the beginning of victory. Are you ready to explore this counterintuitive wisdom? To discover how stopping your fight against life might be the very thing that sets you free? Stay with me as we journey deeper into Frankl's profound insight and learn how it can transform your relationship with suffering forever. This content and the others are like real therapy sessions. Don't miss them. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss your next visit to your psychologist, who will be grateful for your like. Comment "cure" below if that's your goal and send it to that dear person who also needs to address their emotions. Consider for a moment the story of Elizabeth, a brilliant concert pianist who lost her right hand in an accident. For months, she fought against reality, sinking into depression and rage. "Why me?" became her daily prayer. Her resistance was understandable, but ultimately futile. The hand would not grow back through anger or denial. One day, while listening to the radio, she heard about Paul Wittgenstein, a concert pianist who lost his right arm in World War I, but went on to commission famous composers to write left-handed piano concertos. Something shifted in Elizabeth. Instead of fighting against her new reality, she began working with it. Today, she performs globally, not despite her limitation, but transformed by it. Bringing music to those who believed their own limitations meant the end of their dreams. This is what Frankl meant when he wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." When we stop fighting against life, we don't become passive victims. We become active creators within our circumstances. We shift our energy from resistance to response. Frankl observed this phenomenon in the concentration camps. Prisoners who maintained their inner dignity, who found purpose in helping others, who discovered meaning even in suffering, they possessed a resilience that transcended their physical condition. Some would save a piece of bread to give to someone weaker. Others would whisper words of encouragement. Some simply maintained their sense of humor, a final act of spiritual freedom. This perspective transforms how we view our daily struggles. The job loss becomes a redirection toward your true calling. The relationship ending creates space for authentic connection. The illness becomes a teacher of presence and gratitude. This isn't denying pain, it's transcending it by finding meaning within it. Consider your own life. Where are you exhausting yourself in resistance? What reality are you fighting that might actually be inviting you to grow in unexpected ways? What if, paradoxically, your surrender becomes your strength? Modern psychology confirms Frankl's insights. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that many trauma survivors don't just recover, they experience profound positive changes. They report deeper relationships, greater appreciation for life, increased personal strength, spiritual development, and new possibilities. Not because trauma is good, but because meaning-making is transformative. This is the essence of Frankl's approach: tragic optimism. The ability to remain optimistic despite the tragic triad of pain, guilt, and death that inevitably touches every human life. It is not naive positivity, but a hard-won perspective that acknowledges suffering while refusing to be defined by it. Frankl himself lived this truth. After losing his pregnant wife, parents, and brother in the Holocaust, he could have been consumed by bitterness. Instead, he remarried, continued his psychiatric practice, wrote books that changed millions of lives, and lived with purpose until his death at 92. He didn't deny his grief. He transformed it into meaning. When you stop fighting against life, you discover the difference between fate and freedom. As Frankl put it, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. This space, this gap between what happens to us and how we respond, this is where our humanity resides. This is where meaning is created. This is where we find freedom not from suffering but within it. The river doesn't fight the mountain, it carves a new path. The tree doesn't resist the wind, it bends and grows stronger. The phoenix doesn't deny the fire, it is transformed by it. What mountains are you trying to move that you might instead flow around? What winds are you fighting that you might bend with? What fires are trying to transform you that you keep trying to escape? Frankl's approach invites a profound shift, from asking, "Why is this happening to me?" to "What is this asking of me?" From "How can I escape this pain?" to "What meaning can I find within it?" This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, a perspective that deepens with time. It begins with acceptance, not as resignation, but as acknowledgement of what is. Then comes responsibility, the recognition of our freedom to respond, Finally comes meaning, the discovery or creation of purpose even in pain. A cancer patient practicing Frankl's approach doesn't deny their disease or their fear, but they might find meaning in how their illness deepens their appreciation for each day. They might discover purpose in how their journey inspires others facing similar challenges. They might find significance in the love that surrounds them during treatment. This is not about minimizing suffering. It's about maximizing meaning. When we stop fighting against life's inevitable difficulties, we free up enormous energy that can be redirected toward growth, connection, creativity, and service. We stop being victims of circumstance and become authors of meaning. If you're finding wisdom in these words, subscribe now and join us on this journey through Viktor Frankl's life-changing philosophy. Together, we'll explore how to transform suffering into strength and find freedom. Even in life's greatest challenges, let's translate Frankl's profound wisdom into practical steps you can take today. A framework for transforming your relationship with suffering. First, practice tragic optimism daily. Each morning, acknowledge one difficult reality in your life. Don't fight it or deny it. Simply state it as fact. Then ask yourself, what meaning might I find within this challenge? This isn't about forced positivity, but about creating space for purpose even within pain. Woman diagnosed with chronic pain described her practice. Each morning I acknowledge, today will contain physical suffering. Then I ask, how might this suffering connect me more deeply to others? What might it teach me? How might it make me more compassionate? This doesn't eliminate my pain, but it transforms my relationship to it. Second, identify where you're exhausting yourself in resistance. We often don't recognize how much energy we spend fighting unchangeable realities. Make a list of things you cannot control but are fighting anyway. Your aging process, a past mistake, someone else's opinion. Now imagine consciously releasing that resistance. What energy would be freed? How might you redirect it? A man caring for his mother with Alzheimer's realized he was spending hours each week in fury that this disease had struck his brilliant parent. The resistance changed nothing about her condition, but drained him completely. When he finally said, "This is our reality now," he redirected that energy into creating meaningful moments with her in the present, despite her cognitive decline. Third, practice paradoxical intention, one of Frankl's therapeutic techniques. When facing fears or anxieties, instead of resisting them, intentionally exaggerate them to the point of absurdity. This breaks their power over you. A woman with social anxiety who feared blushing in public would tell herself before meetings, "I hope I turn as red as a fire truck. Maybe I'll set a world record for blushing." This humorous exaggeration diffused her fear and, paradoxically, reduced her symptoms. Fourth, identify the 3 sources of meaning Frankl described and cultivate them daily. Creative values. What can you create or give to the world, even in small ways? Experiential values. What beauty, truth, or love can you experience and appreciate? Attitudinal values. When facing unchangeable suffering, what dignified attitude can you adopt? A terminal cancer patient, unable to work, creative values, or engage in once-loved activities, experiential values, found meaning through his attitude, showing his children how to face death with dignity and even occasional humor. This became his final powerful legacy. Fifth, practice the defiant power of the human spirit. Frankl's recognition that we can stand against even internal psychological forces. When unhelpful thoughts arise, say, "I notice I'm having the thought that this suffering is meaningless, but I am not my thoughts. I can choose my stance toward this challenge." This subtle shift, from identifying with thoughts to observing them, creates crucial space for freedom and meaning. Now here's a perspective shift many miss in Frankl's work. Suffering isn't just something to endure or find meaning within. Properly understood, it's a compass pointing toward what matters most. When you suffer over a relationship, it reveals how much connection matters to you. When you grieve a loss, it demonstrates your capacity for love. When you feel angry about injustice, it highlights your commitment to fairness. Your suffering, examined deeply, reveals your values. Frankl wrote, "Suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning." But we might add, suffering reveals meaning by showing us what we truly care about. This transforms everything. Your anxiety about a presentation isn't just nervousness to overcome. It reveals how much you value doing quality work. Your heartbreak isn't just pain to endure. It shows your capacity for deep connection. By stopping the fight against these feelings and instead asking, what does this suffering reveal about what matters to me? You discover a hidden map to a meaningful life. A businessman shared, "My burnout wasn't just exhaustion to push through. When I stopped fighting it and listened, it was telling me I'd abandoned my values for someone else's definition of success. My suffering was actually a compass pointing me home to myself." This approach doesn't glorify suffering. It extracts wisdom from it. It doesn't seek pain, but when pain inevitably comes, it asks, what might this teach me? What values does this highlight? How might this redirect me toward what truly matters? When you stop fighting against life, you don't become passive. You become receptive to lessons, to redirection, to deeper truths about yourself and what gives your life meaning. Is your mind expanding with these insights? Give this video a like, but stay with me for one final, transformative understanding of Frankl's wisdom. Viktor Frankl's journey through unimaginable suffering led him to a revolution in understanding human resilience. While modern culture often promises freedom from suffering, Frankl discovered something far more powerful: freedom within suffering. When you stop fighting against life's inevitable challenges, you don't surrender to fate. You claim your power to respond with meaning. You transform from victim to creator, from prisoner to free spirit, regardless of your external circumstances. Remember, the question is not how can I avoid suffering, but how can I suffer meaningfully? Not why did this happen, but what now will I do with it? Frankl himself embodied this transformation. From the ashes of personal tragedy and witnessing humanity at its worst, he didn't emerge bitter or broken. He emerged as a beacon of tragic optimism, acknowledging the worst of life while affirming its meaning. As he wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." Your suffering may not match the extremes Frankl witnessed, but your capacity for meaning-making is just as profound. Your challenges contain hidden invitations. Your pain carries buried wisdom. Your limitations conceal unexpected paths forward. The moment you stop exhausting yourself in resistance and ask instead, what meaning might I create here? Everything shifts. Energy returns. Possibilities emerge. Freedom, not from circumstances but within them, becomes your lived reality. This isn't just philosophy. It's practical wisdom for everyday resilience, for finding your way forward when no way seems possible, for discovering that, as Frankl observed, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Today, right now, you can begin this transformation. Where are you fighting against? Reality. Where might acceptance lead not to resignation, but to creative response? What meaning awaits your discovery, even in your darkest moments? The water doesn't fight the rock, it flows around it, and in time, shapes it. The reed doesn't battle the storm, it bends and remains standing when rigid trees fall. What might you become if, like them, you stopped fighting against life and instead flowed with it while maintaining your deepest values? This is Frankl's enduring gift, the understanding that between stimulus and response lies our greatest human freedom, the freedom to choose meaning even in suffering. Has this message illuminated something in you today? Leave your mark with a like so these words can find other souls searching for deeper meaning. Subscribe and activate notifications to receive regular doses of wisdom and perspective that the modern world often overlooks. Share in the comments the word purpose if something here resonated with your journey. Your experiences matter. They might become the spark that ignites our next exploration together. What struggle are you currently facing that might contain hidden meaning? What resistance might you be ready to release? Share your story below. Your vulnerability might become another viewer's breakthrough. Remember, When you stop fighting against life, you don't become its victim. You become its student, its artist, its meaning maker. And in that transformation lies freedom no circumstance can take away. This isn't the end of a video, it's an invitation to a new beginning. Join our community of meaning seekers as we explore life's deepest questions together. Subscribe now, share with someone who needs this message, and carry this wisdom forward. Your suffering isn't meaningless. It's waiting for the meaning you will give it.